Welcome to our channel. They were once the most beloved child stars, icons of an entire generation, lighting up screens every week and filling millions of childhoods with laughter and emotion. But then, just like that, they vanished without a trace, as if they had never existed. Behind their sudden disappearance lies a web of heartbreak, tragedy, and unanswered questions. Stories buried in silence, mysteries left unsolved. No one knows where they went, and no one talks about them anymore. Did Hollywood erase them from public memory, or are there deeper truths still being hidden? Join us in today's video as we uncover the chilling mysteries behind the disappearance of 15 black child stars. Christophe St. John. Christophe St. John, the tragic fall of a star. Christophe St. John entered the world of Hollywood at just 10 years old, quickly proving himself to be a rare and extraordinary talent. His breakout role as young Alex Haley in Roots, The Next Generation's 1979, showcased his natural, heartfelt acting and marked him as a child star on the rise. As he grew, so did his success. His portrayal of Neil Winters on Young and The Restless cemented his place in television history, making him a beloved figure to millions. It seemed that fame and fortune had set the stage for a life of endless triumphs. But fate had other plans, one steeped in unimaginable tragedy. In 2014, while reading a script in his room, Christophe received a devastating phone call. His eldest son, Julian St. John, had taken his own life in a psychiatric hospital at the age of 24 after years of battling depression. That moment shattered Christophe's world. Overcome with guilt and heartbreak, he spiraled into a deep abyss of despair. The once charismatic actor, full of passion and warmth, became a shadow of himself, consumed by sorrow and drowning his pain in alcohol. Friends and colleagues noticed a shift. The lively, dedicated performer they knew had faded into a lonely soul seeking solace in liquor and isolation. Many nights, he would sit alone in his car outside the cemetery where Julian was buried, whispering into the darkness as if speaking to his son. A close friend once received a haunting text from Christophe that read, "I don't know how much longer I can keep living like this." When they rushed to check on him, they found him sitting motionless in a corner of his room, an empty bottle beside him, his eyes vacant, lost in grief. On February 3rd, 2019, Christophe St. John was found dead in his home, surrounded by empty liquor bottles scattered across the floor. The official cause: heart failure, worsened by years of alcohol abuse. A tragic ending, perhaps an inevitable one, after relentless suffering and hopelessness. Christophe St. John's story is a heartbreaking reminder that even the brightest stars can be extinguished by personal demons. From the dazzling lights of Hollywood to the lonely shadows of his final days, his passing left an irreplaceable void in the hearts of those who once adored him. Jamie Foxworth. Jamie Foxworth, the tragic fall of a forgotten child star. In the late 1980s, Jamie Foxworth was a familiar face in American households. As Judy Winslow on the hit sitcom Family Matters, 1989 to 1993, she was part of the childhoods of millions, her character seemingly destined for a bright future in Hollywood. But just as her star was beginning to rise, the industry mercilessly shut the door on her dreams. Without warning or explanation, Judy Winslow vanished from Family Matters after 4 seasons. The producers had made a decision, shifting the show's focus to Steve Urkel. But what made matters worse was the way they erased her. No farewell, no closure. It was as if she had never existed. At just 14 years old, Jamie Foxworth was discarded by Hollywood. She fought to find new roles, but the industry had already moved on. The real nightmare, however, came when her family's financial stability crumbled. Once the primary breadwinner, Jamie suddenly found herself jobless. Desperation set in as her family was forced to drain her $500,000 trust fund just to survive. But even that wasn't enough. Bills stacked up, debt collectors called incessantly, and her mother would break down in tears with each new overdue notice. Feeling powerless as her world collapsed, Jamie sought escape in drugs and alcohol. But when those numb feelings weren't enough, she made a desperate decision, one that would change her life forever. With trembling hands, she signed her first contract in the adult film industry. The bright lights of Hollywood had faded. The cheers of adoring fans were replaced with an industry that offered neither warmth nor respect. During her first scene, overwhelmed with regret, she broke down in tears, only to be ridiculed for being unprofessional. When the truth surfaced, the public reacted with shock. The once beloved child star had now become a scandal. Those who once adored her now pitted or scorned her. Hollywood, the very place that had abandoned her as a child, erased her completely. Isolation and trauma pushed her deeper into addiction. But before she lost herself entirely, Jamie made a choice, one that would define her true strength. She entered rehab, walked away from the adult film industry, and fought to rebuild her life. In 2009, she gave birth to her first son and vowed never to return to her past. And yet, one haunting question remains. If Hollywood had not so cruelly abandoned a 14-year-old girl, would Jamie Foxworth have ever been forced down such a tragic path? Danielle Spencer. Danielle Spencer. The tragedy that haunted her forever. Danielle Spencer was one of the most beloved black child stars of the 1970s, charming audiences with her sharp wit and natural charisma as Dee Thomas on What's Happening, 1976 to 1979. With her sassy comebacks and infectious energy, she quickly became a fan favorite. But just as her career was reaching new heights, a devastating tragedy changed the course of her life forever. In 1977, on the way home from a trip, the car carrying 11-year-old Danielle and her stepfather lost control. It flipped multiple times before crashing violently. When Danielle finally woke up 3 weeks later, the harsh glare of hospital lights blinded her. Tubes and wires covered her fragile body, pain radiating from every inch. Weakly, she whispered her first words to her mother, "Where's Dad?" But the silent tears and slow shake of her mother's head said it all. Her stepfather was gone. He had wrapped his arms around her in the final moments, shielding her from the impact, giving his life so she could live. Despite her injuries, Danielle refused to let the pain stop her. She returned to finish filming What's Happening, but Hollywood had lost its magic. When the show ended in 1979, she walked away from the spotlight, choosing a path shaped by her stepfather's love and sacrifice. She became a veterinarian, dedicating her life to helping animals. For years, she believed she had left the past behind, but the pain never truly let her go. In 2004, doctors diagnosed her with spinal stenosis, a condition linked to the injuries she had suffered as a child. The damage was so severe that she was left paralyzed for 8 months, enduring agonizing surgeries just to walk again. Then, in 2018, another cruel twist of fate struck. She was diagnosed with breast cancer. Once again, she found herself in a fight for her life. To the world, Danielle Spencer was a bright, feisty young girl who lit up the screen. But behind that image was a woman who had spent a lifetime battling fate. Would her life have been different if she had never entered Hollywood? Or was this tragic destiny always waiting for her? Todd Bridges. Todd Bridges, a child star lost to crime and addiction, and his fight for redemption. In 1978, at just 13 years old, Todd Bridges skyrocketed to fame as Willis Jackson in the hit sitcom Different Strokes. Almost overnight, he became one of the most recognizable black child stars in America, adored by millions. But in a cruel twist of fate, the same industry that built him up would soon cast him aside. When Different Strokes ended, so did Bridges' career. The roles disappeared, the contracts dried up, and the income stopped flowing. Once a sought-after young actor, he now found himself struggling to escape the towering shadow of his past success. Hollywood had no place for him anymore. Feeling abandoned and directionless, Bridges turned to drugs. What started as a temporary escape from rejection quickly spiraled into a devastating cycle of addiction and crime. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, the once promising star fell into a downward spiral. He was arrested multiple times for drug possession, DUIs, and even violent assault. The lavish movie sets of his childhood were replaced by the dark corners of drug-ridden neighborhoods, where he sank deeper into substance abuse. Desperate for money to feed his addiction, Bridges even resorted to dealing drugs. Then came his lowest point. In 1989, Bridges was accused of murder, allegedly shooting and killing a drug dealer during a deal gone wrong. His arrest made headlines across the nation. How could a beloved child star fall so far? His mugshot, wrists bound in handcuffs, was splashed across every major newspaper, turning him into a tragic symbol of Hollywood's dark side. Yet, in a shocking twist, he was acquitted due to lack of evidence. He had narrowly escaped a life sentence, but he was still trapped in the chains of addiction. His rock bottom came the most terrifying way, an overdose. Alone in his car, Bridges' heart stopped beating. Had he not been found in time, his name would have been added to the long list of child stars gone too soon. But that near-death experience became his wake-up call. Determined to reclaim his life, Bridges fought his way back from the brink. He broke free from drugs, left his criminal past behind, and embarked on a long road to redemption. In his 2010 memoir, Killing Willis, he laid bare the painful reality of his life behind the cameras. A story of abuse, exploitation, and abandonment. Todd Bridges' story is more than just a personal tragedy. It is a damning indictment of Hollywood, an industry that builds up bright-eyed children, drains them of everything, and then discards them when they are no longer profitable. For Bridges, his fall from grace wasn't just a career setback. It was a life sentence, handed down by a system that had failed him in every way imaginable. Yet, against all odds, he survived. And in doing so, he became more than just a child star. He became a testament to resilience, redemption, and the power of second chances. Shavar Ross. Shavar Ross. The horrific secret behind an innocent smile. From 1980 to 1986, Shavar Ross brought warmth and humor to audiences as Dudley Ramsey on Different Strokes, leaving an indelible mark on viewers with his charm and infectious smile. But behind that innocent grin was a painful secret, one he kept buried for years. Among the many memorable episodes of Different Strokes, one, in particular, sent shockwaves through audiences. In a gut-wrenching scene, Ross's character, Dudley, became the victim of a child predator. When the episode aired, it left the public stunned and ignited conversations about the horrors of child abuse. What no one, neither the cast, the crew, nor the millions watching at home, realized was that Ross wasn't just acting. He had already lived that nightmare in real life. As a child, Ross carried a secret too terrifying to share. He had been abused by a family member. The fear silenced him, forcing him to carry the weight of his trauma alone. So when the cameras rolled, he didn't have to pretend to be afraid. He had felt that terror before. When the scene wrapped, the crew applauded his performance, unaware that inside, the little boy they were praising was trembling, drowning in the dark memories that came rushing back. No one asked if he was okay. No one saw the real pain behind his eyes. Perhaps in Hollywood, the only thing that truly shattered was the ratings, while the emotions of child actors, real children, were left abandoned. When Different Strokes ended, so did Ross's Hollywood career. The industry that once embraced him soon cast him aside. There were no new roles, no second chances, only fading memories of the beloved Dudley. But unlike so many of his peers who succumbed to drugs, alcohol, or crime, Ross chose a different path. He didn't chase fame or try to reclaim the spotlight. Instead, he sought refuge in faith, believing that only religion could free him from his past. Yet, even after stepping away from the entertainment world, the darkness never truly loosened its grip. It clung to him like a never-ending nightmare. Night after night, standing alone in the silence of church, he prayed, desperate for peace. But deep down, a haunting question remained. If God was always watching, why didn't he protect me when I was just a child? Ross may have walked away from Hollywood, but the wounds in his soul never fully healed. Some tragedies never end. They're simply buried deeper, in the shadows where no light can reach. Stymie Beard. Stymie Beard, the lonely end of a comedy icon. Once, he was the heart of laughter in America's darkest days. Matthew Stymie Beard, the beloved face of our gang, brought joy to millions during the Great Depression. His signature bowler hat and mischievous grin made him a household name, a generational icon. But while audiences adored him, Hollywood never truly valued him. Like many black actors of his time, Beard was paid far less than his white co-stars, forced to accept the industry's unspoken rules. Yet, the greatest injustice wasn't just a pay gap. It was how Hollywood discarded him the moment he outgrew his childhood charm. No more roles. No more opportunities. No one remembered the little boy who once lit up the screen, abandoned by the industry that once celebrated him. Beard spiraled into despair and poverty. Heroin became both his refuge and his prison, trapping him for decades. Though he later tried to rebuild his life, taking on small guest roles, he never regained his former glory. In his final years, Beard lived alone in a modest Los Angeles apartment, a stark contrast to the stardom of his youth. The years of addiction, hardship, and neglect had aged him beyond his time. Then, on January 8, 1981, his body, weakened by years of substance abuse and high blood pressure, could take no more. As he made his way down the stairs, a sudden stroke struck him. Unable to hold on to anything, he collapsed onto the cold floor. No cameras, no flashing lights, no applause, just silence. Hours passed before anyone noticed he was missing. When neighbors finally checked his apartment, they found him lifeless. His death made no headlines, no tributes, no memorials. Hollywood remained silent, as if he had never existed. A child star who once made the nation laugh was now gone, forgotten, erased. A cruel reminder of how the entertainment industry disposes of its own. William Billy Thomas Jr. William Billy Thomas Jr., a star forgotten by Hollywood. William Billy Thomas Jr. was once a beloved star, known for his signature braided pigtails and mischievous grin as Buckwheat in Our Gang. He brought joy to millions, but behind that cheerful image was a child unknowingly stepping into the same cruel cycle of fleeting fame. When the series ended, Billy, like many other black child actors of his time, found himself cast aside. Hollywood had never truly cared about them beyond their roles. Once he outgrew his character, the calls stopped, the opportunities vanished, and the industry that once celebrated him simply moved on. With no path back to the screen, Billy let go of his dream and took an ordinary job, working as a film technician at Technicolor. Instead of performing in front of the camera, he now worked behind the scenes, restoring and preserving film reels. Ironically, the very medium that had once made legends of others had long since forgotten him. One afternoon during a break at work, a colleague recognized him, but instead of admiration, laughter filled the room. "That's Buckwheat? Man, what happened?" someone scoffed. Mockery replaced respect. The role that had once been his pride had become a joke at his expense. Billy clenched a film reel in his hands, swallowing his humiliation. Hollywood hadn't just discarded him. It had turned him into a spectacle. On the night of October 9th, 1980, Billy finished a late shift. As he walked home, a sharp pain stabbed at his chest. He brushed it off, telling himself it would pass. But later that night, the pain returned, fierce and unrelenting. Alone in his small apartment, he reached for the phone, but his weakening fingers never made it. An old Our Gang film reel sat untouched on his table, a cruel reminder of the legacy he once held. Hours passed. No one heard his fall. No one came to check on him. It wasn't until the next afternoon, when he failed to show up for work, that his co-workers sent the police. They found him on the floor, his expression frozen in his final moments of pain. For over a decade, Billy Thomas Jr. brought laughter and warmth to millions. But when he left the screen, and even when he took his last breath, Hollywood did not care. No tributes, no funeral honors, no recognition. The world remembered Buckwheat, the character, but Billy Thomas Jr., the man behind the role, was forgotten. Gary Coleman, the heartbreaking fall of a forgotten child star, once the highest paid child star in Hollywood. Gary Coleman was an icon of the 1980s. His role as Arnold Jackson on Different Strokes made him a household name, and his signature catchphrase, "What you talking about, Willis?" became a pop culture sensation, printed on t-shirts, echoed in sitcoms, and forever cemented in television history. But Hollywood only cherishes its child stars while they're young and adorable, and Gary was no exception. When Different Strokes ended in 1986, it wasn't just a show that disappeared. It was Gary's career, his purpose, and his place in the industry. He fought to find roles, but his short stature, caused by a lifelong battle with kidney disease, Made directors see him as a child trapped in a man's body. No one wanted to cast him. The once lucrative offers vanished. The same industry that had once embraced him had no place for him anymore. Then came the cruelest blow. The $18 million he had earned was gone. Stolen. His adoptive parents, people meant to protect him, had drained his fortune, leaving him with almost nothing. Gary wasn't just broke. He was betrayed. He lost his wealth, his fame, and his trust in the world. And the nightmare didn't stop there. By the 1990s, his health had deteriorated. He needed dialysis 3 times a week just to survive. Yet Hollywood had nothing for him but demeaning bit part roles, if they acknowledged him at all. To them, he wasn't a beloved star anymore. He was a relic, a shadow of the past. Desperate to survive, Gary took a job as a security guard at a small shopping mall. At night, he would return to his tiny Utah apartment, flipping through TV channels, only to see reruns of different strokes. There on the screen was his younger self, making America laugh. And there he was now, alone, forgotten, a ghost of the star he used to be. From child icon to struggling security guard, from millionaire to broke, Gary Coleman's life became the ultimate Hollywood tragedy, a dream turned nightmare, a legend left to fade into obscurity. Kevin Hooks. Kevin Hooks, a talented child star and the mystery of his disappearance. In 1972, at just 14 years old, Kevin Hooks captivated audiences with his powerful performance in Sounder, becoming one of Hollywood's most promising young actors. At a time when opportunities for young black actors were scarce, Hooks broke barriers with his undeniable talent, earning the kind of acclaim that could have propelled him to superstardom. Many believe he was destined for a long and illustrious career. But just as his star was beginning to rise, he vanished. No explanation, no farewell, just silence. What no one knew was that Hooks had been secretly battling a rare neurological disorder since childhood, one that caused sudden, uncontrollable muscle spasms and loss of motor control. Some days, he would wake up unable to lift his arms. Other times, his entire body would tremble so violently that filming a single scene became impossible. In an industry that demanded perfection, there was no room for weakness. Determined to keep his career alive, Hooks hid his condition for as long as he could. He pushed through, enduring grueling days on set, while privately facing episodes that left him physically drained and emotionally exhausted. But as the years passed, the episodes worsened. He was rushed to the hospital multiple times in the middle of important projects, yet he continued fighting, desperate to hold on to his place in Hollywood. Eventually, the battle became too much. The toll on his body and mind was unbearable. And so, without an announcement, without a dramatic goodbye, Kevin Hooks quietly stepped away from the spotlight. No press conferences, no retirement speeches, just a silent exit from a dream he had fought so hard to keep. But he never gave up on storytelling. Instead of performing in front of the camera, he found a new path behind it. Hooks reinvented himself as a director, crafting narratives from the other side of the lens, where no one would see the body that had betrayed him. Kevin Hooks had the talent, the drive, and the potential to become one of Hollywood's greatest stars. He didn't leave because he lacked ability. He left because an invisible, unforgiving force robbed him of the career he had spent his entire life building. Fate had other plans, but Hooks never stopped creating. And in that, he found a different kind of success. Emmanuel Lewis. Emmanuel Lewis, a silent battle against unseen pain. Emmanuel Lewis was once the embodiment of childhood joy in America. With his bright smile and small stature, he captured the hearts of millions as the lovable Webster in the hit sitcom Webster. For years, he was a household name, a symbol of innocence, laughter, and pure-hearted charm. But when the show ended in 1989, Lewis seemed to vanish from Hollywood, leaving behind a mystery no one could explain. Many assumed he had simply chosen a quiet, peaceful life away from the spotlight. But behind that silence lay a heartbreaking truth, one he never wanted the world to see. He had been fighting a relentless, hidden battle all along. From childhood, Lewis suffered from a severe growth hormone deficiency, a condition that prevented his body from developing like the average person's. But his struggle wasn't just about height. What the world didn't see was the excruciating toll it took on his body. Over time, the disorder caused devastating damage to his nervous system and internal organs. Every day, he woke up to chronic pain. His muscles would spasm without warning, sometimes leaving him unable to move. And yet, through it all, he kept smiling for the cameras, determined to hide his suffering from the public. During one of his rare public appearances, Lewis suddenly collapsed on stage in front of a stunned audience. But the moment he was helped back to his feet, he forced a bright smile, waving as if nothing had happened. The crowd assumed it was just exhaustion, a fleeting moment of weakness. But in reality, it was a grim sign of what his body had endured over the years. As Hollywood's interest in him faded, Lewis made a painful decision: to disappear before the world could witness his decline. He turned down interviews, distanced himself from the media, and retreated from the public eye, not because he had lost his love for acting, but because he wanted to preserve the memory people had of him, forever frozen as a happy, energetic Webster. Emmanuel Lewis's disappearance wasn't just a career choice. It was a quiet tragedy. A man who had once brought so much joy to millions was forced to hide his pain, to keep his suffering a secret, just so the world could hold on to the perfect image of him. In the end, he chose to fade away, ensuring that Webster will remain untouched by time, forever preserved in the hearts of those who loved him. Rodney Allen Rippey. Rodney Allen Rippey, from childhood stardom to betrayal and loss. In the 1970s, Rodney Allen Rippey was everywhere. With his chubby cheek smile and irresistible charm, he became a sensation, stealing hearts in Jack-in-the-Box commercials and propelling the brand to millions in revenue. At just a young age, he was raking in over $1 million through endorsements, talk shows, and guest appearances. But behind the scenes, the fortune he worked so hard for was never truly his. Rippey's parents controlled every aspect of his finances, constantly reassuring him that the money was being carefully invested for his future. Yet when he turned 18 and checked his bank account, he was met with a devastating reality. Barely $5,000 remained. The wealth he had accumulated had not been lost to reckless spending, but had instead disappeared through questionable investments and financial mismanagement. Decisions made without his knowledge or consent. And just like that, Hollywood, which once couldn't get enough of him, moved on. The contracts, the offers, the adoring attention, all vanished overnight. No more flashing cameras, no more invitations. Instead of meeting with producers, Rippey found himself standing in long unemployment lines, applying for regular jobs like everyone else. During one interview, a hiring manager skimmed his resume, then looked up and asked, "Aren't you the Jack-in-the-Box kid?" Rodney forced a weak smile and nodded, but instead of admiration, all he received was a sympathetic shake of the head. He had once been a star, but now no one needed him. Years later, Rippey fought to reclaim his life. He pivoted to business, even ran for mayor of Compton, determined to carve out a new identity beyond the shadow of his past. Yet, no matter how much he rebuilt, Hollywood would always remain a painful chapter, a place that had used him, drained him, and discarded him without a second thought. Mark Kopech. Mark Kopech, a child star lost in Hollywood shadows. In the late 1960s, Mark Kopech became a beloved face on American television, charming audiences as Corey and Julia, 1968 to 1971. A groundbreaking sitcom that shattered racial barriers and redefined primetime TV. The show made him famous, adored by millions. But when the series ended, so did his career. Hollywood no longer had a place for him. Kopech fought to stay in the industry, chasing every audition, clinging to the dream. But the response was always the same: there are no roles for you. At the time, leading opportunities for young black actors were almost non-existent. One moment, he was a national television star. The next, he was completely out of work. His savings vanished, leaving him homeless, forced to sleep in his car, drifting between places to crash. Once a household name, he now had nowhere to call home. Desperation pushed him to take whatever work he could find: waiting tables, stocking shelves, even hard manual labor. The same Hollywood that had once celebrated him had moved on, forgetting his name. Meanwhile, his former co-stars thrived, their careers flourishing, while Kopech spent his nights alone, staring at the ceiling of his old car, wondering if anyone even remembered him. After years of struggling against an industry that had long since shut its doors, he finally let go of the dream. Hollywood had abandoned him. So he walked away, choosing a quiet, ordinary life far removed from the spotlight. No more red carpets, no more applause, just a forgotten star, fading into the shadows of a town that had once worshipped him. Ralph Carter. Ralph Carter. Hollywood's cold-blooded betrayal of a cultural icon. Ralph Carter was once a beacon of hope and inspiration, lighting up screens as Michael Evans on Good Times, 1974 to 1979. His character, a sharp, passionate young man fighting for justice, became a powerful voice for black youth in America. But when the show ended, so did his opportunities. Carter searched desperately for new roles, but Hollywood had already moved on. Casting directors dismissed him with empty promises. We'll keep you in mind, or we're going a different direction. But the message was clear. They no longer wanted him. One audition, in particular, was a breaking point. The director stared at him for an uncomfortably long moment before sighing and asking, "Do you still think you're Michael Evans?" Hollywood has moved on. That single sentence shattered something inside Carter. He realized in that moment that the industry had no place for him anymore. Weeks later, a rare audition opportunity came his way. Clutching onto hope, he flipped open the script, praying for a real shot at redemption. But as he read the lines, his heart sank. The only role they offered him? A homeless man, forgotten by society, just as Hollywood had forgotten him. Carter walked out, tore the script to shreds, but it didn't change the painful reality. This was how they saw him now, a washed-up star with nowhere left to go. With no other options, Carter left Hollywood behind. He turned to theater, clinging to his passion, but without the same spotlight, he faded into obscurity. Once adored by millions, now erased from Hollywood's memory, as if he had never existed at all. Perhaps the cruelest fate in this ruthless industry isn't just rejection. It's being forgotten. Kim Fields. Kim Fields. The price of a bold decision. Kim Fields was one of the brightest child stars of the 1980s, leaving an unforgettable mark with her role as Tootie Ramsey in The Facts of Life, 1979 to 1988. At the height of her career, she made a daring choice, stepping away from Hollywood to pursue higher education. Many saw it as a wise move, expecting her to return stronger, wiser, and ready to reclaim her place in the industry. But reality had other plans. When Fields attempted to re-enter the entertainment world, she was met with an unsettling truth. Hollywood had moved on without her. Auditions ended in disappointment. Doors that had once swung wide open now remained tightly shut. No one was looking for the little girl who had once charmed millions. Refusing to fade into obscurity, Fields shifted her focus to directing, hoping to take control of her own career. But as a black woman in Hollywood, breaking into the industry behind the scenes proved to be an even greater challenge. She quickly ran into the invisible walls of sexism and racial discrimination, barriers that quietly stifled countless talents like her. During one particularly passionate pitch meeting, Fields found herself face to face with the harsh reality of the industry. As she poured her heart into a project, a male producer suddenly grabbed her arm, pulled her in close, and whispered through clenched teeth, "Don't you understand how Hollywood works? If you want a place here, you have to learn how to play along." Fields yanked her arm free, stunned by his audacity. When their eyes met, she saw the unspoken threat behind them. That moment wasn't just a loss of a project. It was a brutal realization that Hollywood had little room for black women who refused to conform, despite her relentless efforts to carve out a space for herself. Fields never regained the spotlight she once had. Her name still surfaced here and there, but the offers stopped coming. Hollywood didn't need to blacklist her. They simply stopped caring. And in this industry, indifference is the most effective way to erase someone. Stephen Perry. Stephen Perry. The talent erased in 1961. Stephen Perry mesmerized audiences with his role as Travis in A Raisin in the Sun, a groundbreaking film that brought the struggles of black Americans to the forefront. For a brief moment, he was a rising star, a young actor with a promising future. But just a few years later, He had vanished from Hollywood, his name whispered only in speculation and mystery. Some sources claim that Perry faced profound personal crisis, one that led him to abandon the entertainment industry forever. Others suggest a far darker fate. Rumors swirled of a catastrophic accident, one so devastating that it shattered not only his career, but his very identity. One unverified account tells of a horrific car crash that left his face permanently disfigured. Determined to reclaim his place in Hollywood, Perry reportedly returned, hoping for a second chance. But as he stepped into audition rooms, he was met with a cruel reality. The industry that once embraced him had no space for an actor who no longer fit its rigid standards of beauty and marketability. Hollywood didn't just turn its back on him, it erased him. To this day, the truth about Stephen Perry remains unknown. Did he leave by choice, or was he cast aside by an industry notorious for its brutal disregard of those who no longer serve its image? Was he simply forgotten, or was his name deliberately wiped from history? Hollywood has seen many child stars vanish into obscurity, some fading quietly, others consumed by tragedy. Each disappearance leaves an undeniable sense of loss, a haunting reminder of the unforgiving nature of fame. They once shone brightly, only to be swallowed by the relentless machine of the entertainment world. So tell us, which of these forgotten stories lingers in your mind? Which tragedy refuses to fade? Share your thoughts, and let's ensure that these once beloved stars are not lost to the silence of time.